Hey guys, with Warborne Season 2.1 ending and 2.2 right around the corner, I think it's time for a tier list update. In this video, I'm going to rank each drifter according to how well they perform in specifically ZvZ combat and content. I'm not going to be accounting for any other type of content other than mid to large scale battles with, say, 40 versus 40 or more, right? Let's get right into it. Electrics, solid B tier. I think that Electrics' main problem, maybe even C tier. I think Electrics' main problem is that he gets outshined by the other options in the early to mid game. And I think by the time that you're scaling in late game, if you haven't been using Electrics the whole time, it doesn't make sense to like put any kind of investment into him. And I think because of that, he gets overshadowed a lot by the other options. Nixa, pretty much the same thing. I think, you know what? I'm going to put these both in C tier. I think that Nixa suffers from that same problem in that she's useful in other types of content more so than ZvZ. And it's not that these people are useless, right? It's just that they are less prevalent, right? No drifter here is legitimately useless in ZvZ. Like if you bring a character with like some kind of a proper setup, you can make it work. You can make most characters work, but they're not ideal. They're not meta, so to speak, right? Overdrive, instant S tier. Overdrive consistently shows that he is one of the strongest, if not the strongest option for ZvZ style physical combat in the meta. Overdrive didn't even receive any changes for 2.2, and as such, I don't see him getting dethroned from the S tier position that he's been in dominantly for the entire time that the game has been out, in my opinion. Vricia, I think, again, small scale, very good. But as far as ZvZ is concerned, definitely, again, outshadowed by Overdrive. It's just significantly better. Umbra. Umbra is a dark horse, in my opinion. I previously was not familiar with Umbra's game, so to speak. And I think that the Predator Bow style auto attack meta with her passive together, very strong. If you're not considering that style of gameplay, she probably drops down a tier. But because of the consideration for Pred Bow and because they have not seen any changes for her or the bow, I think that that's still a significantly stronger option than some of these others at the bottom, especially specifically when it comes to ZvZ. Although I personally would not use her over Overdrive probably as my primary. Sangwar is probably B tier. I see Sangwar more in like mid to small scale. I think that he is generally a choice for people who want to be doing small scale content and ZvZ content simultaneously because he's so good at doing both, right? But I wouldn't consider him the strongest of the options by any means. Blade is worse than Sangwar, ergo I have to put him down a tier. I would maybe even go as far as to say that Blade is worse than some of these other C tier options. I'm going to stick him in D tier. I have kind of a hate on for Blade at the moment, just because so many of the other options are just so much better, especially for ZvZ. That's not what his kit is for, literally at all. Illusarch, I think that there are some niche uses for Illusarch, but his passive just got a nerf. Which makes his damage potential a little bit lower. But there are some like cheeky things that you can do with Illusarch, and I think that he is mostly playable. I would bring him. I think that he's very average. I wouldn't want, say, 10 of them in the Zerg. That wouldn't make any sense. But I would look into this, even though I have him at B tier. I think that if you're one of those players that likes to play alone, probably not a good idea. But if you play with like a smaller group and you want to have some kind of an effect, especially with bombing, probably jumps up to A tier. Mole is hard F. Probably should just straight add a category for Mole, to be honest. It doesn't even make any sense to have her on the tier list. Him, her, it on the tier list. Strictly speaking for ZvZ, it doesn't make any sense to run Mole. I know that there are probably some meme lords that are thinking like, yeah, Mole's great. And you see my previous videos, Mole's S tier. But that's because I was considering other avenues of gameplay, and Mole's the only gatherer in the entire game. So for gathering, sure, S tier. But for everything else, it doesn't make any sense to even quantify. Shadowseer just got a little bit of a change. I don't think Shadowseer is quite as strong as Umbra, but probably about as strong as, say, Sangwar. Very niche use case. I think that if you're using Shadowseer, maybe actually I'm gonna go pull it down a tier, because I think that Shadowseer suffers from the same thing that all of these other people in C tier suffer from, is that there are just better options. You're not gonna run Shadowseer probably just because things like Hive Queen, Vesca, and Raven exist, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Helix is for ZvZ A tier. I dare say that Helix is one of the best at what she does in the game, but it's one of those things where, again, you don't want tons of them. You don't want let's say like a smattering. You don't want like a plethora of Helixes on your team. You probably only want like a couple. I think that she's very good. I don't think that her kit is specifically designed with ZvZ in mind, and there are just better options. Matter of fact, just because I'm considering those other options, I'm going to take her down a peg even harder. Again, that isn't to say that anybody in B tier is bad, right? B tier is still very acceptable. If you got a B on a test, you're chilling, right? C is passing, right? D is the only thing where I would just like straight up just not consider them, because they're just too many better options, to be honest. Revelation is probably S tier. He's got the, if you know how to use him correctly, which is the hardest part about his whole kit, he has one of the best area cleanse like helpers in the game. He is irrefutably one of the best healers. You need at least one somewhere in the Zerg. I would take a couple. Like if you said to me, hey, we have 4 revelations today, awesome, I will take that. I would never be mad about it. Selene, similarly, you're going to need at least one. I think I'm going to put Selene lower than Rev, even though I know that Selene is just as necessary, just by the way of the fact that Selene is more easily accessible to most players, and I think that typically you're going to just see more of them. So if you're a player looking at this tier list, you might think to yourself, well, I have Selene, I'm looking for other options. If you see other people playing Selene, switch off of her. If you're the person who's the only person you know playing Selene, stay on her. She would theoretically be S tier in that scenario because her passive is just so good. Hive Queen, S tier. Significantly better at getting away than most of these other people, even the people that are all in strength tier or strength attribute scaling. I think that Hive Queen's ability sets her apart from the other options in the way that she can get out of a really bad situation just by using her ability and moving. Makes her pretty much 100% immune to whatever for a couple of seconds. Gives her a little bit of move speed and says, nah, I'm out. Really good ability to have. Works kind of like Soldier Helm if you ever played Albion Online. I think that Hive Queen is used for a variety of playstyles. Tanking is one of them. I think that because of that ability to get out, she makes for a very good D-tank. Vesca, very similar in the same way that you're going to run her for D-tanking, in that if you kill her, she just doesn't die. She turns into a snake that can get out of dodge. So her passive is kind of like Hive Queen's ability, except she also has an ability on top of that that petrifies everybody nearby. My personal love for Vesca makes me want to put Hive Queen in A tier, but I feel like this is disrespectful, knowing so many people are using Hive Queen because her ability is so strong. People want to have the player agency to be able to get out of the stuff that they don't want to be in. And Vesca, unfortunately, only has the ability to do that when she's killed. I put quotes on it because you have to lose HP in order for her ability to proc. So both of these characters, very, very good at staying alive. If in ZvZ you find yourself dying more often, you're going to want to look into both of these characters similarly. Raven, I think just got a tiny little bit of a nerf because of the frost collar changes in small scale. I probably would still use her in ZvZ. I don't think that there's any reason not to have a couple Ravens doing caster stuff somewhere in your group. I think that Raven is definitely better than, say, Shadowseer in that way, and sits on the same niche level as like Sangwar or Helix. That you might want to bring one if you like caster stuff. Definitely consider it for ZvZ, especially knowing that Raven is just so good outside of ZvZ that like if you invest a lot into her, you're going to get a lot of value out of Raven. Moonveil. Moonveil is a necessary evil. You're going to need at least one. Um, chances are someone in your group is probably running Moonveil. I don't necessarily like her E ability or her her ultimate ability, depending on whatever your cooldown. No. Your keybind. Whatever your keybind is. Her ultimate ability just kind of shields people nearby. Like it does damage theoretically, but like you're never in range for it to do damage. So like, But as far as like gaining mana back and stuff like that, she's pretty much the only one that does it. So you kind of have to have one just to keep everybody's mana up. And mana's not like a huge issue at the moment, but they're changing things every season. And I know that there are more mana changes coming in 2.2. So probably be on the lookout for Moonveil, especially if you're using Selene. You get healing bonus if you pair them together. So like these two as a pair makes a lot of sense. So if you die on Selene, you'll end up on Moonveil anyway, or vice versa. Astral Magus, very niche gameplay thing, just like with Illusarge, right? Like if you're bombing or you're doing like cheeky stuff with your group, Astral Magus he could be as good as S tier. Like if you're swift with how your placement is and your positioning is very good and you're working with a bomb group to do maximum damage and get in quickly, Astral Magus can be a demon on the battlefield. He is very good. But outside of that, the other options are just so good that you don't want a ton of them. Same, as before. I think that he's probably just here in, the mid, what I would call like the niche category, right? Zero, dude, Zero is the first character that you get. He silences, he does a knockback. I honestly really, really like him. But Overdrive exists. Why would I bring this knowing this exists, right? This is not bad, but I think that in order for you to get to a point where you're wanting to use Zero instead of maybe Overdrive for whatever reason, you're going to have to invest. You're going to have to waste crystals that you would have been putting into, say, Overdrive on Zero, knowing that you already have the what are they called? Battle Scars. If you have the Battle Scars to upgrade him to like +5 pretty comfortably, maybe he's worth looking into, but I don't recommend it. I think that just because there are better options, I would say that he's in the same kind of sinkhole as Electrics, in that I just generally wouldn't use him. As I'm looking at this, I feel like I was maybe a little unfair to Blade, given that he's not Mole. You know what I mean? Like he's at least marginally useful in some way. I just genuinely would not recommend him. I'm gonna move him up, but just know I don't recommend almost anybody in this whole category for specifically ZvZ, right? Maybe Shadowseer is like the best of this group, right? Syracuse continues to surprise me. I was once a knockback hater, right? I hate people knocking back anything anywhere near the clump, right? Whether you're doing it before, during, or after, I don't care. That said, Syracuse with Cyclone Axe has proven consistently that it is a strong defensive tank option that will put a gap of space between you and the enemy. Be careful playing him, though, because he doesn't have the same ability to get out as Hive Queen and Vesca do. So if you're pushing the enemy off of your own team and they leave, and you're standing there knocking the enemy team back, when your ability ends, you're going to die. So just be careful with the way that you do things, is all I'm saying. Very, very good ability. Kyra, however you want to say her name, I think suffers from the idea that there are just too many tanks that are just doing it better, so to speak. I would maybe even go as far as to say you could put her in C tier. The reason that I think that she's so low on the tanking poll is mostly because her bonus is percentage armor, which is like super good, in my opinion. I think that if you're a tank and you have, at the end of the game, upwards of, 800 armor, and she's giving you upwards of 8+%, like you're getting 60, 70 fucking armor from just her, that's fantastic. I think that she's insane. I don't have enough personal use case with her to say that she's bad. I just don't generally see them at all. So, like, if I'm not using her and I don't see anybody else using her, I'm obviously not willing to just rank her any higher than any of these other people that I hardly ever see in ZvZ. Izzy, I see more often. Izzy has the highest strength scaling in the game, but for whatever reason, nobody uses her. But it's probably because she suffers from the same thing that Syracuse suffers from, in a way where they don't have the ability to get out. So as a D tank, like if you get into like enemy territory area, right, and you're stopping the enemy from doing the thing that they want to be doing, they're going to be pretty mad. So they're going to turn on you. And if you don't have a way to get out, generally speaking, you just die. I think it's okay as far as like her ability staving off, people chasing you or whatever. I just think that Syracuse just does it better with Cyclone Axe. Even though I do really like Izzy's ability, and she has the ability to have like an insane amount of HP later in the game. Varnax, I have what I would call a hate on for Varnax, just in the same way that I do for Blade, except that realistically speaking, Varnax is one of the best. And I know it. I refuse to admit that previous to this video, but I know that he is one of the best, like, front engaging tanks in the game, because he has the ability to just keep chasing you with his ability. And once he connects, it stops you from moving. So once he gets a hold of someone, you're almost guaranteed that that person is going to die unless the enemy Zerg is coming toward you, in which case you're not chasing. That whole scenario doesn't make any sense, right? I think Varnax suffers from that same tank thing where he doesn't necessarily have the greatest way to get out, although he does have a leap, so maybe better than Syracuse in that way. But I don't know that he's S tier material. I don't know, man. Maybe he is. Maybe he is S tier material. The jury's out on that. If you think that Varnax is S tier material, leave a comment. I'm going to put him in A because I don't like him. Guess what? Aegis. What did they do to my boy? They just increased Aegis's scaling a little bit, just like a very little bit. But the thing that they really, really hurt with Aegis is that his ability increases his own damage now. I don't understand why they did that. Aegis's whole thing is that he shields and protects, and then when he has a shield on, as long as the shield is up, his damage randomly goes up. But nobody scales damage on Aegis, so like, why are we doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Most of the time when I use Aegis is just because I'm using him for Drifter Companionship. That's it. Dorian. Dorian's like one of those like, you might see like one. Almost no one uses him. And the reason for that is because the support station bonus for Dorian is max HP. Almost every tank is going to have him in the support station. There's no reason not to have him in there. And his ability's not like wondrous to the level of like you would want him over, say, Vesca, for example, or Syracuse. I think that they're just strictly better at doing the job that he's trying to do. Draknor is very Izzy-like in that he does a good job of mitigating people coming at you, right? Where he puts cages up or whatever, and he can create a small clump, but he's mostly designed for like mid to small scale combat, especially given that his ability only has a 5-person target cap limit. So you can't like create these massive clumps no matter how big the enemy Zerg is that you're attacking. Although the cages can hit whoever walks over them. So like he's still pretty useful, but very niche. I think that if you're running Draknor, it's probably because you like doing small scale content and because you're not willing to branch out to upgrade the other avenues of detanking gameplay, and you're just like settling for playing the same character, much like a person who's playing Sancor would do. Ahri is A tier. So Ahri just got like a very, very small cooldown nerf, but the thing that makes Ahri so good is the versatility. Ahri can be built as a frontline support. Ahri can be built as a frontline detank. Ahri can be built as a midline shield support. Ahri can be built as a backline healer, and all work just like they're supposed to. It's outrageous the amount of versatility that this character has. Highly suggest looking into her if you like any of the support style gameplay avenues. She does all of them, no problem. The one thing that Ari doesn't really do real well is DPS, but duh, you know. Firestorm, dude, Firestorm historically was not fantastic. After I got deleted by that Firestorm gun nonsense that a few of the other Zergs were doing, and got a chance to look at it myself, this is actually pretty strong. I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I think that if you're willing to get a couple of people to try out the Firestorm really long range gun style barrage gameplay, it can be fun and it can be rewarding, but it is not gonna win the war, so to speak. It is annoying to try to like fight into it, but it's not impossible. And realistically, if you're providing that many people with sitting away from the Zerg style gameplay, it detracts from the front in a way where you might just get rolled over, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So it's not a playstyle that I would recommend to everybody, but maybe worth checking out. The last two here are the last two that were added were Tiana. Tiana's got this beast thing that drops down on top of people. I think that it's not necessarily ZvZ centric. You can drop it on the clump, but it's not going to do a ton, and the pet is really wonky. Do not recommend. Generally speaking, you're going to put her in your support station because she reduces the amount of damage you take, and that's just really strong to me. Whether you're a healer or a tank, heck, if you might even be worth, it might even be worth willing. Hello? It might even be worth you losing a couple of DPS percentage points specifically because you want to be taking less damage in some scenarios where you would maybe want to use her in a support station even on a damage dealer. But I don't necessarily think that that makes sense. Probably don't recommend that. Generally speaking, I wouldn't use her in ZvZ. Her ability is just not strong enough, right? And then Vire. Last but not least, Vire is... it's probably bordering B to A tier. I'll probably put her in B tier just for the same reason that Sangor is here, in that there are just better options. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm maybe thinking to myself that the caster like archetype was a little bit ignored in a way where I would probably consider Raven up here at A tier, just because I see Raven more often than the other drifters that are used, that are down here, right? Most of these other drifters that are down here, especially the ones in C tier, I almost never see. You might see like one or two of these guys. You might see like 3 or 4 of these guys in like a given Zerg. More often than not, you're going to see a ton of overdrives. You're going to see a ton of revelations. You're going to see a ton of Vescas. You're going to see a ton of Hive Queens. You're going to see a smattering of Selens, Moonveils, Syracoses, Varnax, Aries. I think that the majority of Zergs is gonna keep up here in the meta. If you have any questions, guys, you have anything to add, agree or disagree, leave a comment down below. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the channel. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.